Welcome back to the First of the Worst podcast. I'm Brendan Murphy.
And I am Steve Arendas.
Steve, we have a treat tonight for the third podcast I believe this has happened now, but this is our second guest ever. Carly Owen is a first ballot Hall of Famer in the First of the Worst Guest Hall of Fame. Currently the only member. We'll see if tonight's guest can also join her. We have one of my best friends, a guy with the best name on earth, joining us. WSCR's own Brendan McCaffrey, henceforth known as Mac throughout the podcast. But thanks for joining us, Mac.
Glad to be here. This has been an interesting podcast, and I've had many disagreements with some of the lists that you guys have had over the years. I'm excited to be a part of this. And the topic that we're going over for this episode is one very near and dear to my heart.
I couldn't think of a better person to do this with on the face of the earth. And Steve, do you want to introduce the topic tonight?
Yeah. Just to throw it out before everybody else, I'm going to be going with the Murph and Mac naming on this, so you guys just don't hear me say Brendan 1,000 times during this podcast for everybody listening.
It probably will happen, but
it'll probably still happen and be confusing. But I'm going to try.
It's funny because you're one of my only friends that calls me Murph. That calls me Brendan.
Yeah, I met you at work.
We worked together.
That's why. But yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to list the top 10 defunct video game systems, or I guess video games, not non-current video game systems. So I guess our rationale for why these are the worst is because they're not current, but you could argue that some of these are incredibly awesome.
I was about to say,
they are awesome.
As somebody who basically runs on nostalgia 24/7, to me, this list is the best. It's not the worst. It's absolutely the best. And most of these systems that we're about to list, I still play on and off to this day.
I've lived in a home, so I haven't personally owned everyone, but I've lived in a house or an apartment or something with every system on this list. And so there's a little difference. Since there's three of us, we're going to try something a little different. I had Mac and Murph both send me their lists, and I kind of ranked them. First place vote was 10 points. They don't know the list currently. I do. So we have one list of 10. And because we did this kind of like an NCAA football or basketball rankings, we have an others receiving votes category. So I'm just going to kind of just rattle these off and quick, these others receiving votes, because they're not as important. And just if you have any comments on them, let them fly, because the first one I'm going to say is Sega CD, and I can't even believe somebody put that on a list.
I will put that. I'll tell you why I put that on the list.
Go ahead.
Because the first pair of boobs I ever saw were during a Sega CD game.
That's fair. Honestly, that's the best possible reason you could have given.
And in truth and advertising, I put it at number 10.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was on your medal stand.
No, I mean, it made the Olympics, essentially.
The super high quality Echo the Dolphin game that you might have had on that particular system. I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, guys, to jump in here, I feel like that system lived a really, really short life around, like 93, 94?
Yeah, something
right
like
around
that.
there.
And then they came out with like a 32X, which is like another like add-on system, which nobody talked about here.
Sega never got their footing after Genesis.
Yeah,
no, they didn't.
I actually owned. I want you. You're going to the others receiving votes, so I'll let you go to this.
Yeah.
I didn't put it on my. So I had another Sega.
Nobody.
system.
Do you have a Sega Saturn? Please tell
did.
me you had a Sega
It was
Saturn.
such a mistake. But like, okay, so PlayStation. So let me justify that. PlayStation did not. It was the first iteration of PlayStation. Sony had not done a gaming.
It was head-to-head. You're right. It was head-to-head.
And Sega had Sega Sports, which was really good. World Series Baseball was a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why
head-to-head.
I did it, and it was a colossal fucking mistake.
Sega Saturn is like, it adds to, I always think of like these third world countries they talk about when you get the Chicago Bears Super Bowl 41 t-shirt that's like in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of kids playing Sega Saturn.
Wearing those shirts.
And you've got Dreamcast. They're watching things on Betamax, and they've got a bunch of HD DVDs lying around.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
Literally the island of misfit, electronics.
Our others receiving votes category, none of them got 2 votes. So we have a few of them. There's also Mac for his number 10, TurboGrafx 16.
Which I don't remember. I do remember playing that game, but I don't remember like playing that system. I don't remember what game. It was a football game, and it was only one person I knew, a kid I grew up with and went to elementary school. This kid Ron, and he lived real close, and that was the system that their family had, and it was cool, but nothing like I can tell you a game I played from all these other systems. That one, no concept. Just
I feel like
football game.
I feel like I only played that as like a sample at Toys R Us, like on display. Like I didn't know anybody who had that.
I mean, I listed a system I never played, but I think you got to respect the game.
Okay. So then I put as my 10 a Wii because that was like a fun novelty for 10 seconds.
At least it was innovative to some extent. Although I always felt with Wii,
it was a gimmick
that people reacted to it, but Nintendo had been doing that shit forever. Punch Out had the glove. They had the track and field pad. They've had that shit forever.
Oh man, that trackpad, you used to tear ass on that thing.
That thing was hard.
Well, and it wasn't really trying to. You weren't simulating a track and field thing. It was
you didn't actually lift your feet off the pad.
Yeah, it was basically, can you smash your toes on a pad as much as possible?
And then long jump, you jump off the back of the pad and then try to time it to get back on soon enough because if you were off too far, your guy would just fall. It was great. And then Murph put Pong.
That was the one I'd never played, but come on, respect the game.
Was that on Atari?
It was its own system.
It was Pong was its own system.
Speaking of Atari 2600, I put that didn't make the list.
I played one of those.
We had one. My parents had one when I was a really little kid. And I just vaguely remember playing a game where like you were a tank. You could be tanks or planes, and you could shoot at each other, but only one bullet could be on the screen at a time. So like you had to wait till your bullet left the screen.
So, what is this, the video game equivalent of Russian roulette? Like, hopefully it doesn't come for you. Talk about a perfect. I've been reading a book on the Cold War, so this is like perfect timing. So we're right in the middle of like or toward the end of the Cold War, the late 70s, early 80s. So that's what you have. You have this missile game, tanks versus missiles, or
something like that.
It's still how they fight wars in a lot of countries. By the way,
that's true.
And then
our tanks and our missiles
are for sure ours, or given to them by Russia too, in the same like manner of selling them to them. And our last others receiving votes, this would be from the fan base who would claim they're ranked number 11, even though they're not. Which college fan bases love to do when they're ranked like 26. Mac put Game Gear on there.
Oh, Sega Game Gear was. Speaking of, again, apparently my whole life is boiled down and distilled into the mid 90s. I'll never forget having that. That was I never had Game Boy. We had Game.
I never
Boy.
had one either.
I
had a Game Gear.
And it's weird because I never thought of myself as the kid that had like portable electronics like that. I always felt like that was for the quote unquote rich kids, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I did have that system, and I remember World Series baseball. Playing like the Florida Marlins, that was right around 93, 94. The Florida Marlins were like a new team, and you could play as them. And Greg Maddux was on the Braves, and that's been my favorite baseball player of all time. So I certainly wasn't going to be the Cubs, and for some reason at the time I wasn't going to be the White Sox. So I remember being Greg Maddux in that game, and the
Sox were probably awesome.
The Game Gear was great, yeah. And it was, you think about it, you think at the time that it's real small, like today's cell phone. But the thing was probably like, about as wide as my shoulders are, as a 9-year-old playing the thing.
And the screen wasn't that big.
Yeah.
And it would eat batteries. It would just eat batteries.
Yeah.
It was a far superior system to Game Boy, though.
Yeah, because it had like color screens.
Yeah, color screen and the graphics were much better.
And better sound.
Game Boy kind of seemed to last.
Yeah.
A little longer, but it was far. In video games, we learned that superiority doesn't always reign supreme.
Correct. There's a nostalgia factor. There's a nostalgia factor. You could almost say the same thing sometimes about computers, like ease of use.
Yeah,
I'm one of these people, and we'll get into this as we go on with the show. But I got to a point where there was too many fucking buttons. Like I just can't do all. I can't hit 12 buttons to make the guy shoot the other guy. Like I don't need to have the running back doing like a dance down the sideline.
Oh man, you need that right stiff arm and left stiff arm.
Give me the speed burst and the spin move, and I'm good to go. Maybe the hurdle.
The R2L2 changed the game because it allowed the option into college football video games, which was tremendous.
That's where I was a generation behind. I mean, I was out after that. I'm like the coach. I'm like the whoever the offensive genius was before Bill Walsh. That's me. Because once it got to the
Curly
Bill Walsh
Lambeau?
level, no, I'm thinking like Don Coryell, like right around there, 70s. Once it went to Bill Walsh, forget it. I'm out.
I was the guy who just ran like running quarterback offense for my entire life, basically. When I started, well, we'll get into it when we get in my first system on here. But before we get to our top 10, I'm how many years older am I than you guys? 3? Okay, that can shape some of this list depending on how old you are when certain games come out and like things like that, and specifically like how old you are in college and like what game systems you have in college, which is where we're going to get to the fact that our number 10 was only voted by me. This is the last one that only got picked by one, but I must have ranked this one 6th, and it's Sega Dreamcast, which was the balls my first year and a half of college.
I never played it. Never played it, but I did think there was a cool feature on Dreamcast that I heard about, and that was that it had a little screen on the controller. So you motherfuckers couldn't watch me pick my plays.
I
love that.
In NFL 2K, and it was the first online system, though it was like sketchy online, and you got the 2K games, which was like it came out with NBA 2K and NFL 2K.
That's Sega's only stream of revenue at this point, probably, is the 2K franchise.
Like NBA 2K, basically?
Yeah.
They don't even have, like, NFL 2K doesn't exist anymore, does it?
I don't think so. I don't think it's existed for a while.
Is there an NHL or an MLB?
I think, well, certainly Madden has the only NFL license that I know of. And NHL, EA Sports still does that one. I really don't know.
For a while, there wasn't even a Major League Baseball game.
Only on PlayStation.
It existed every year?
That game was awesome.
RBI Baseball?
No, it was just like some Sony PlayStation.
MLB The Show or whatever.
The Show, and it's amazing. Yeah.
So my only experience with the Dreamcast, and Steve, as you talked about, you were going to college right around this time.
Kids had them in the dorms.
I was just behind you.
Yeah.
Because I remember in high school, my buddy had the Dreamcast, and he played a game. He was a Raiders fan.
Yeah.
Played the Titans versus the Raiders. So this is
Eddie
George. Eddie George, like in his prime, might have even been on the cover of the 2K game for all I know.
He was, I think.
He calls me up. He says, Brendan, Mac, for our purposes tonight, Mac, you got to come over. I paused the game. Eddie George just broke literally 22 tackles and scored like a 65-yard run. I go, okay. I got in my car. I drove across town to my buddy's house. He had paused the game. He put the instant replay on, and I shit you not, he broke 22 tackles. The computer I'm talking about, not my buddy. The computer, Eddie George, could not be stopped. It was like Bo Jackson from Super Tecmo Bowl or from Tecmo Bowl times about 1,000,000. It was unbelievable. It was like carnage in the field.
The Titans were my squad because you had Eddie George, and Steve McNair was like pre-Michael Vick in that game, where like you could run with the quarterback too, and it was amazing, and nobody knew how to defend that guy.
See, to me, that's some racist shit right there. Steve McNair was never like a Michael Vick type running quarterback, but they're like, "Hey, you're a black quarterback, get your ass running immediately." Like that's what's going on.
Byron Leftwich was also deceptively athletic in that game.
Like Byron Leftwich is friggin' Randall Cunningham. Give me a break. Like that's just it was probably. No, now I'm being racist. It might have been like some Japanese guys putting together the video games. They're like, oh, black quarterback, whatever. They're all fast. So who knows?
They're two motherfucking Baku.
Yeah, we'd have to go look at the credits of a 16-year-old game and figure out what's going on.
All right. So number 9 system, a system I didn't rank, and I'm just partial to the other one, and it was the OG Xbox. You guys both ranked it, but both ranked it fairly low. So it made both your list. Made our list
on my list for one reason. I didn't ever own one, but what you said earlier about it being in a house you lived in. In college, like everyone had one or the other. So you were around Xboxes, but I think that Xbox gets the nod here from me for like actually figuring out how to do online via Xbox Live.
It was the first like so Dreamcast was the first online, but like Xbox kind of like they kind of.
I mean, I don't even like first person shooters, but Halo was like a game changer.
Yeah, all I have to speak on with Xbox is definitely Halo. When I played Halo for the first time, that was like an experience. You have, I think, with all the systems that we're going to talk about, all of you will have like at least one game per system that you're like, okay, that will always remind me of playing that system. It'll give you like a time frame in your life. You could think of whether it's a dorm or your buddy's house or your parents' house, whatever. For me, I think of college, and I think of playing with one of my buddies, Brandon, playing Xbox and playing Halo. I don't have, for other than that, I don't have a lot with Xbox.
Yeah, I never really had
a lot of Halo. That was once I got to a point right around college where I just kind of stopped with the video games. I mean, it's not that I never play them, but I kind of retreated. I'm like a conservative. I retreated to the warm embrace of years gone past.
Right? You did do that Madden franchise with Cedric Benson, where he was the greatest running back of all time.
I did. We can get to that as well. That was I was quite the GM. I was a Hall of Famer. Let's just say that. In my mind.
Built some new stadiums and stuff. Okay. Number 8. Game Boy. Didn't make my list either. Hurt my hands to play and hurt my eye. I got a headache when I played it, so I couldn't play it.
Here's what they got right on Game Boy that Game Gear did not do, in my opinion, is Game Boy, they figured out that there's a limited capacity on these handheld games for people to pay attention to detail. So they just said, fuck details. And they just did big colorless blocks, and I think it worked.
You just put, basically, so your ranking was, instead of Game Boy as your number 6, you just ranked Tetris number 6.
Well, I just remember.
I mean, what Game Boy game had good detail?
I don't know. I didn't play it.
It's one of those things. I'm trying to think of the other games I would have played too, other than Tetris. And Tetris was the main one. There might have been like Dr. Mario might have been on there, which I feel like was just another version of Tetris, like a Mario-ized version of Tetris.
I had a baseball game on there, but
I'm sure there was all like a generic version of every sport.
It's one of those things that it's sort of like a blind spot. I remember playing it, I remember liking it, but I don't remember anything about it. It's sort of like hanging out with me for a night, you know? Like, oh, he was there, but there was nothing really to write home about.
Okay. So now we're going to number 7. I think we kind of hit a tier here. We're getting into some more serious ones. I think Mac did not rank this one, though. Okay. Our number 7. I ranked it much higher than you guys, and it's PlayStation 3.
It's the last system I've owned. Probably last
year. I still own one.
I think I gave mine away.
I don't use it. It's in a box.
Yeah, I mean, we only got one TV. If Ashley came home and I was just like hunkered down in an NBA 2K15 online battle, she'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Especially because it's like
also
2K15.
This game's 3 years older.
It's time in your early 30s to reevaluate your life choices if that's what you're doing.
Dude, but I'll tell you right now, if I had a PS4, I'd be on that shit. So thank God I don't.
There's nothing less cool than playing like the previous video game system. It's cool like once you go a couple back, but like being like the guy who just like playing PlayStation 3 all the time is not cool.
Just means like, you're a broke ass motherfucker.
It would be like
the reason I don't have PlayStation 4 is because I can't shell $400.
Yeah, it's like you also get to a point where you're just kind of like you're an adult, sort of, you know. So you're like, should I be spending more time with my wife, or should I be playing this video game system that is going to provide me no human interaction, is going to really kind of amplify all the worst habits I have, like sitting on my ass on the couch and eating just shit and staying up later than I should, you know? So you get to that point, and that's why I didn't rank it, because I basically, after PlayStation 2, I was kind of out. I'm not saying I've never played any of these systems, but I haven't bought any of them. I haven't owned a game, and it just kind of left my life. And I am the other systems you'll see, like I've got a couple of the other systems, and I will still play it. Yeah, but yeah, think of someone like, would you hang out, or have you heard of anyone playing Guitar Hero right now? No, you know, like that. No, that's like 1 or 2 generations. Like generations now are shorter and shorter, I feel like, in the video game realm. But yeah, nobody plays that anymore, so because it's kind of sad.
PlayStation 4 came out in 2014, so a PS3 now is like 7 years old if you own it.
They've already like release like an updated, more powerful version of a PS4. It's just like has more RAM or something, like a computer. I don't know. PS3 for me was basically a system where I played NBA 2K and Madden with people and drank beer before I went to the bar. Like that's what a PS3 was for me.
That was the PS3 era in Steve's life.
I played so many NBA 2K games in my late 20s. My brother came in one day and he's like, "Wait, your record's 150 and 148?" He's like, "What the fuck, dude?" And then he would play me.
You're 500 player.
Being like, "You played this game 300 fucking times and I just beat you."
Yeah, you're a 500 player.
Okay, I'm going to go in the bedroom and kill myself.
That happened to me, but not with a PS3 or PS4, but with an Xbox. What's the newest Xbox? 360?
Xbox One.
Xbox.
Yeah.
They're just trying to
It's
confuse
really
everyone.
confusing.
So on Thanksgiving, the last couple of years I brought my old Nintendo to play with my older cousins and their kids. So my older cousins are like in their late 30s to mid 40s, and we used to play Nintendo, and that was how we grew up. But now their kids are between 12 and like 7, so I bring the old Nintendo to show them, oh, check it out, this is what we played, and they seem to like it. But then they're like, all right, we got to play Xbox One. They're like, let's play NBA, let's play Madden. So we put Madden in. I hadn't played Madden in 6 years. Well, I was beating the crap out of my little cousin in the first quarter. I was Pittsburgh, he was Dallas, and I was taking it to him. I had like a 20-point lead. And then I did the smart thing. I'm like, I got to go. We got to go home. It's late. It's a school night.
Just get out
like,
before they figure out that
wait a
you
minute,
only know like a few things.
Yeah, before my 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense in video games was not going to hold up.
You should have pounded that kid into submission. You should have ran the clock out. Mac, do you want to tell the story the first time we met? Actually, this is a funny story.
What video game system would that have been?
That would have been PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2.
And I'm playing Mac in, I believe, NCAA football. The first time I've ever met him.
Yeah, so this is at University of Missouri, and Murph lives kind of across the dorm from me. So I'm getting to know everybody. I wear like a Sox hat. People, we're all from the Chicago area, right? So I realize he's got a video game system. I don't, but I like video games, so I'm going to go play. So we play football. And this asshole is better than me, and that's fine. I guess that part I could handle, but I'm a sore loser at times. But he's about to run out the clock, and he kneels. He performs a quarterback kneel at the end of the game.
You fucked the story up.
In a two-player game. Well, you go ahead. You tell me. Are you trying to tell me you didn't kneel?
I am losing. I'm in field goal range. I set up my field goal. I run the clock down to 2 or 3 seconds and call timeout like an NFL coach. And he was fuming, and I kicked the field goal in the game.
I thought you had to
just win, baby.
I thought, see, that's not how I remember it. It just goes to show you that, 13, 14, 15 years are long gone, and I don't really remember anything. I thought you had a lead in that game, and you were kneeling instead of just running the football. It's the same principle.
I'm not saying I was above that.
There's some alternative facts going on right now, and I don't know who to believe.
Well,
that would have been PS2.
To the victor go the spoils. So I guess Murph gets to write the history. History's
Yep.
So we'll go with Brendan Murphy's version on this over Brendan McCaffrey's.
So we're on number 6, and I emailed you guys. I don't know if you saw it. I said there's a hill I'm going to die on.
I did see that.
I was excited to see which hill that would be.
And it's my number 1 is somehow ranked number 6 because Murph didn't even rank it. And I'm not gonna lie, I might say some mean things to you guys if we start talking about this. So just take that.
Can I guess what it is?
Yeah, I know you're gonna guess.
I think I know what it is too.
Super NES, right?
It's a Super NES. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you could only have one, Super NES or Sega, and I had Sega, and I think I made the right choice.
I think you could have. I think most people only had one, but you could like both systems. And the fact that you don't have it ranked in the top 10, I think, is a crime against humanity.
Yeah, I had Sega low because my brother had one, so we had both in my house. But it's insane, guys. I don't even see the argument.
All right, tell me
what you
really
love.
SNES.
You really love
no
Sonic
good sports games.
Incorrect. It had the same games mostly.
It had all the exact same games.
I might be factually inaccurate here.
Yes, this is again.
I have to admit that.
It had a better controller because you didn't have those weird 3 buttons. I didn't have to press select or whatever. How do you even play Madden with only 3 buttons?
You snap with C. You
But,
have
like,
A,
you only-
A, B, and C to throw, and
There's
you,
only 3 guys running routes in your Madden games?
Yeah.
This is
Oh, no, select was oftentimes.
No, not in Sega Madden. Listen, Steve, this is 1993, baby. We're running the ball a lot. We don't need it's a lot of 2 tight end sets. 3 receivers is maximum.
No, I trust me, I understand. I once kept a franchise on paper
when the passing windows come up in the old game.
Yeah, I kept my stats on paper after every game for my season, and I ran for 2,700 yards with Christian Okoye. So like
Nigerian nightmare.
But man, you guys, the Mario game was awesome too. It's not all sports games.
You're right.
Mario was awesome. That was the best Zelda game.
And to me, that's still the best version of. Well, maybe not the best version, but Mario Kart. That was the first system that Mario.
OG
Kart
Mario Kart. Yeah,
the original Mario Kart. And yeah, they're.
All right. Well, I will say, on the Nintendo, I did go hard at the top of the list on Nintendo related things.
Yeah, you did.
As you should.
But yeah, so like when that,
I guess it was just lack of exposure for me.
Oh, I get it. I knew this was very possible going into this. If you grew up with a Sega, you're probably gonna rank that higher. That's just how it is, right? Just nobody I knew really had a Sega, and a few times I tried to play them, I was like, these buttons are weird. They're in the wrong place. Okay. And yeah, okay.
So that was your number one.
That was my number one. Super
Over
Nintendo.
original Nintendo.
Well, let me, Steve. What was your favorite game on that system? Like
it's Zelda. It's Zelda.
Okay.
Zelda 3.
It's just funny how different people's video game histories can be, because I never played that game one time, and for all the people that I knew a few people with SNES, including the cousins I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I never saw anyone ever play that game.
It's one of those things. You can't play that game with people either, though. That's like a pure solo. You know what I mean? Like, NBA Live was great on those too. I think NBA Showdown to NBA Live, Supersonics. Oh man, Sam Perkins could just drain threes for days. He was the original.
NBA Live was like one of the greatest games of all time, by the way.
It was amazing.
Here's one though. I know for a fact Sega did not have NBA or SNES, no NBA Jam.
I had it.
I did not know that for a fact then.
I would have, you know what, Steve? I would have been with Murph. I don't remember NBA Jam on Super Nintendo.
NBA Jam. The one thing I know was better on Sega was Mortal Kombat was not bloody. There was no blood in the Super Nintendo version. It was like, it looked like sweat.
So at that time, games were coming out on only one system at a time, though. So like NBA Jam definitely came out on Sega first.
It might have. The EA games all came out all the time, but Jam might have come out first. Like on Sega, that might have been a thing. That might have been what you're thinking.
And like Mortal Kombat might have come out on one or the other.
So did Nintendo just draw the line, like morally, like we can't have this video game pixelated violence?
No, but then later on they came out with this game called Killer Instinct, which was an awesome fighting game, and it was just brutal. But it was made by like Nintendo too, so it was only on Super Nintendo.
Yeah, we will profit off this violence as long as we are the ones profiting and not
solely us,
the middleman.
Yeah, solely us. All right. Number 5, I was a little surprised by how high this one got ranked. Mac had it ranked the highest, and it's PlayStation 1.
PlayStation 1 for me, and that was my first, like, I talked about having an issue with all the buttons, right? So I went from Sega Genesis to PlayStation 1. The football games on that were huge. I remember playing a lot of Madden 98, like in junior high and into high school. And one of my favorite games of all time, I was actually watching a YouTube video. They had the game like broken down into a 4-hour movie. It's one of the best games of all time, Metal Gear Solid.
Yo, good game.
Metal Gear Solid.
They're still making them, I think.
They still make them, yeah.
They were, yeah. That game was like, it was a stealth game. It wasn't just mindless shoot 'em up. It was really cool. And for the time, I think it came out in like 98. For the time, it was just way ahead of what any other game was doing. It was so awesome. I love that game. And I think PlayStation 1 was severely underrated for how good it was and what it led to. It's easy to look now and be like, yeah. And maybe even looking at my list, maybe, in fact, I had 64 ahead of PS1 because I liked the games better on 64. But PlayStation 1, I thought, was just, unbelievable. It was great.
A lot of big franchises started on PS1. Also, I think Tekken.
Yeah.
Started there, and Resident Evil. Those are
Yeah.
not like movie franchises.
Did you ever play NFL Game Day for PlayStation 1? Because I was used to the controller because essentially a PlayStation controller was the same as a Super Nintendo controller, which is like it's shaped different.
Mhm.
Like the buttons were in the same places. But there was this game I didn't like the Madden, so I got this game NFL Game Day, and like after I got like maybe 99, and there was this amazing like juke move that was just unstoppable, except if you use it too often, a guy would tear his hamstring.
I love that. That's realistic.
That's a tough go.
But you could like go these amazing runs, and then your guy would just grab his hamstring and get killed and couldn't
Well,
play
that was
the rest of the game.
That was what Neil Anderson would always do on Super Tecmo Bowl. If you were the Bears and you were doing a season, you'd be Neil Anderson. I would always run because Jim Harbaugh sucked. But you run, and then Neil Anderson week 8 clearly pops a hammy, and then they take him to the hospital. And then the music comes back because they bring him back from the hospital, and he's ready. He's by the way, in full uniform, coming back from the hospital on his way to the game. Straight through?
Was it like Madden 93 for Super Nintendo and Sega, where the like ambulance would come onto the field and like run over the guy?
It was definitely the first John Madden football, where it was just called. It was either called John Madden football or John Madden 92. I had 92. That one. Yeah,
was that the one where the Buffalo Bills had the unstoppable rollout pass, where you could throw a rollout pass to Thurman Thomas and he would score a touchdown every time?
49ers had it too.
It was just a matter if the running back was fast enough.
And speaking of football games, the other one that I really remember, you talked about, I think, NFL Game Day, Steve.
Yeah.
NFL Blitz.
Oh, yeah.
Blitz was a great game.
On original PlayStation, that's one of those games you could just play with people and just lose hours of your life at somebody's house hanging out doing that.
Because that's a game that you can win if you haven't played it. It's kind of one of those things.
It was a total arcade game where if you were losing, they would like cheat for you, or computer assistants or whatever.
Computer aids, as we would call it. We'd accuse people of getting computer aids all the time. It's not.
And one other thing before we move away from PlayStation 1, here's where I'm going to totally nerd out for this system. One thing that we used to do when we, like I'm sure you guys in that age, like 7th, 8th grade, would have like spend the night at somebody's house, have like a sleepover. And we were so nerdy that we would play Risk on PlayStation 1 as part of like our sleepovers. It wouldn't be like, oh, let's, there'd be one or two kids trying to drink alcohol. I wasn't quite at that part yet, but there'd be that person trying to do that. But then, we'd be playing Risk. And Risk on PlayStation 1 to this day is still fun. It's where I learned to love Risk. I love that game.
I respect everything about that. As I got older, one of my friends broke out an old Nintendo, and he had all these like game show and board games on it. And when we wouldn't be sober, we would play you could play like a whole game of Monopoly with like 4 people in like 35 minutes. You know how fun that is? Monopoly's horrible because it takes 2 days to play. You can play the whole game in 35 minutes. It's great.
Risk on PlayStation 1 though still took you like 8 hours. Like we had to be up like all night to do it. And then because it's it's not controlled like the board game. You'd be playing, somebody be kicking ass, and then all of a sudden these rebels would show up, and it was just anarchy in the middle of this game. It's like 3 a.m. Like we're 13 years old, 12 years old. We really probably should get a couple hours sleep, but no, the rebels, they're away. They're up in South America, supported by the CIA, no doubt.
I'm sure they were supported. All right, PlayStation 1. All right, so then we've kind of talked about this already. Actually, before we get into this, you talking about NFL Blitz reminded me of an old Super Nintendo game, and maybe it had existed for Sega. Did you guys ever play Bill Laimbeer Combat Basketball?
It was only an SNES game, and yes, I did.
It was so bad and ridiculous.
Never played it. Out of principle, I will never lay my hands on anything Bill Laimbeer has to do with, unless maybe
including the WNBA.
Well, that too. The only thing I'm trying to think of anything I'd show up for Bill Laimbeer that he was involved in. Potentially his demise. That's about it.
That's it. All right. Okay. So then we're on number 4. We're getting into how the rankings worked. This is another tier up. Super Nintendo should be in this tier. It's an outrage that it's not. But this is another tier up. Number 4. And you guys probably won't like that this is only number 4, but my ranking gave it a shot, and it's Sega Genesis. Essentially, what we've learned is that the Sega / Super Nintendo probably should have been 1 or 2 on this, but it was such a split between what you owned.
Bernie and Hillary.
Yep.
and then we end up with fucking Trump.
Luckily we didn't end up with like Sega Saturn #1. Like
that would have been wonderful. I should have done that just to fuck with the voting.
Atari Jaguar or something like that.
Make the video game podcast great again. Go with the Jaguar. Oh, the Jaguar. I can't believe. Oh,
what else is there?
I haven't heard 3DO. I haven't even heard anyone like refer to these in 15 years, let alone someone who actually had one.
When was Jaguar?
Nobody.
That was in between like Sega and Saturn.
That was like Nintendo 64 time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it was mid-90s. The one thing I feel like we always have to remember, I always assume I have a grasp on when these game systems came out, when these consoles came out, and I'm always like 3 years behind because my family was not early adapters. We were like the last to get one. It was like, oh, I got a PlayStation. Like a week later, PS2 comes out. Like that was my family. So I'm always a little bit off. So I'm like, oh yeah, PlayStation 1 came out in 2009. It's like, no, actually it came out in like 94. You know?
So Sega, you guys were you guys big into the NHL games?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
What was your favorite one? You guys 94, 95,
94.
I'm a 95 actually. I feel like a traitor admitting that, but that's the truth.
I played Super Nintendo and mine was 96. There's fighting in that one.
96 was a good one. 93 had the fighting, and that's where you could make Little Wayne's head bleed, which was
the Swingers
popularized in Swingers. As we
were
know.
94 and 95 the fighting list games.
Yeah, 94 is, to me, it's my favorite, but you couldn't fight. But I thought the gameplay was great, and also I have a soft spot for that too because that was the first time I ever heard surround sound. We went over to my buddy's house, and his dad had hooked up surround sound. So this is like 1995. And all of a sudden we turned it on and played NHL 94. And you're hearing like the slap shot behind you and then like a bone crunching hit in front of you. And you're like, oh my God. Like it was like a glimpse into the future. And it was just this, little 16-bit video game.
I know nothing. Like 100% of my hockey knowledge comes from mid-90s like video games. That's it.
I know more about mid-90s hockey than I do today.
Who were your teams?
I was always Pittsburgh.
Canucks.
Rangers.
That's the great thing about those games, though, is like there wasn't like two teams. There wasn't like two teams that everybody played with.
I don't know how you guys felt. I mean, growing up around here, it was like everybody wanted to be the Blackhawks. So I didn't want to be the Blackhawks only because, why get into an argument? I'll just pick a different team. And I picked Pittsburgh, and you had Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr. I think it's Ron Francis, Kevin Stevens.
They were awesome.
Yeah, Paul Coffey would have been, not Edmonton at the time. He might have been. Detroit at the time? I'm trying to think, or Boston. No, Boston was Ray Bork, Cam Neely, Adam Oates. But you had the Rangers teams were great. You had like Adam Graves, Essetikinen.
Was Mike Gardner on that?
Mike Gardner.
He was on a different team in every one of those games.
It was Graves, Gardner, Leach, Messier.
Yep, Messier.
And Richter, and I'm forgetting the fifth guy.
John Van Giesbroek might have been the goalie, and Richter might have been the backup.
So the Canucks I had was 96 was the Mogilny Pavel Bure year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of offensive firepower and number 0, Kirk McLean in goalie.
Oh, and Brian Leach too.
Yeah, they had a guy. It was like their second line defenseman named Brett Hedican, who was one of those like irrationally good video game characters.
That's what I always felt like about Steve Larmer for the Hawks. Steve Larmer, that I love teams that their right wing was left-handed.
Yeah.
So
no.
And I could never play with a left-handed center, so I never played with Gretzky. I had to play with Roenick or Lemieux or Adam Oates because Cam Neely I think was a right wing. But if you had Larmer or Jagr, a lefty on that right side, I don't know, just the way I worked. And by the way, I could never score going down. I could always score going up. So if I had the home team first and third periods, I'm kicking your ass. If I'm on the road and I'm going down first and third, I'm screwed. Forget it.
You gotta play series against people. One of you guys has to pull it up.
You're right. And we had it wasn't that in college we had NHL 94 tournaments. And actually in a couple weeks we're gonna not NHL, but probably one of my 5 favorite games, Coach K college basketball for Sega.
See, was that Sega only? Well, who made that?
Sega only.
It was Sega only.
EA Sports made that game. It was kind of a one-off. It was almost a one-off in the sense that like they had Bill Walsh college football, and then they went to College Football USA.
And then there was like Joe Montana football for Sega, right?
Yeah, that was super early. Joe Montana football.
Yeah.
Coach K, like, it was right in that sweet spot for me when I actually gave a shit about college basketball, which that sweet spot's left me a long time ago. But you had, put it to you this way, Tim Duncan just retired, and he was the last active player from Coach K college basketball. He's a freshman in that game. And I was doing some stuff at the Score where I work, Score in Chicago, and Antoine Walker was doing some shows the last couple nights for TuneIn, the app. Yeah. Antoine Walker's on the Kentucky team, and I completely forgot to mention to him, I was like, I've been playing you as a video game character for 20 years. In fact, I'm gonna beat my buddy's ass in 2 weeks when they come over for the tournament. We're gonna play, and you're gonna come off the bench. It's gonna be you and Tony Delk and
Tony Delk
and Walter McCarty and all the Kansas.
Kentucky has like 11 pros on their roster.
Yeah,
that's a great team. Is that the best team in that game?
No.
Or is it Duke?
By ranking, they're fourth. Duke is my favorite team in that game. Even though I hate Duke, like in life, I always played with them when I originally played with that game. But in the game, for me, UMass to me is the best team, but Arkansas and UCLA I think are ranked higher because that was the year. It was the year after Arkansas won. The year UCLA did win. So right around, I think the game came out in 95.
They played for the title that year, so they were.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of a great one-off sports game for Super Nintendo. Not a college basketball game at all, but if you ever get a shot at a Super Nintendo and Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball.
Oh, I do remember that game. It was
game's incredible. That game is incredible, and it was like the year. But you could do full seasons, you could do quarter seasons, you could make your season shorter, so you didn't have to play 162 games in your season, which was nice. And you could choose between like the old divisions or the realignment.
Oh,
it was like that. It was awesome. So you could choose the different ways that you did it. Ken Griffey Jr. was the only real player in the game, but it was one of those things where it was obviously the players, and you can like type their names over it.
Was it like
it was identity theft? Like
it was 100% identity.
I think it was Baseball Stars because I have it for Nintendo.
That game's incredible.
That was
a
great game, but they didn't have the Players Association licenses. So you knew exactly who the players were because they just like altered the name slightly. So it was like pitcher for the Cubs, Gaddix. Like, I wonder who Gaddix could be. It was like it was totally, it was totally changed around. Like I think Bonds was just Bond, something like that. Like it was just altered. Like I'm sure some lawyer vetted it and they're like, oh yeah, this.
Bonds was one of those guys who never gave his name to the game, so there was always be this guy like on the Giants later on in like the show who just had but he was like a white guy and he would just like crush home runs.
It was the old Michael Jordan thing, player 23.
Yeah, and then LeVar Arrington did it randomly in football, and it was like, why is this LeVar Arrington not?
I'm not buying the game if I can have my favorite 3-4 inside linebacker.
Yeah, if I could have my really kind of not that good as a pro, but one of the all-time great college football player linebackers.
Yeah, so many hits though between him and Sean Taylor on that Redskins defense. But that was a great game if you ever get a crack at it, and it was also great because the White Sox and the Expos were the two best teams in that game because of it was like a strike.
And then the last thing I'll say for Sega Genesis before we move on, the series, and this was also from EA, but not EA Sports, just Electronic Arts. They were helicopter games called Desert Strike, Jungle Strike,
and
Urban Strike.
Yeah.
So
Urban Strike sounds like a racist game, but it's probably
Urban Strike's actually our new administration's plan for fixing what's going on. They're going to send a helicopter in,
it was a pro-union game.
Yeah, it was. It's actually
the Box Factory in Chatham went on strike, and they made a video game about it. It was fascinating. There was a character for Julio Cesar Chavez. It was great.
It was really boring. You organize with the people on your block, and then you walk down Michigan Avenue, and then nothing happens.
It's like an HBO Vanity Project video game.
They close the factory. That's how it ends.
But yeah, you close the factory, and the rich get richer. But the first game, Desert Strike, came out in '91, and it was basically it's like fighting the Iraq War. So you get in this helicopter, and you're completing all these missions, and you're saving POWs, and you're blowing up, missile silos and rescuing hostages. It's just really, really fun. The next one in the jungle was kind of cool, but the third one was creepy because the third one I think came out in like 95. 96.
The racist one, Urban Strike.
Urban Strike. And you've got these things you've got to do in like DC, and there's one mission you do in New York City. And the terrifying thing is there's a hole in the World Trade Center in one of the missions, and you have to fly the helicopter up there and rescue POWs from the side of the burning World Trade Center. And I'm playing this game like after 9/11, so I'm playing it in college because I told you I'm like 6-7 years behind. And I saw this level, and I was just like, it's like, I don't know, like I was very, very creeped out by it. But then I ended up beating the game. But yeah, it was very
you had to save those POWs.
Of course. I mean, listen, I'm not gonna. If I'm gonna start something, I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah, you gotta finish it. All right, so now we're up to our number 3. The top 3 we all have ranked. No, there was nobody ranked anything really low here. These are all at least top 5 for all of us. Number 3, I think 2 of us. This is our highest ranked PlayStation. PlayStation 2. I loved PlayStation 2.
Probably the system I played the most.
Yeah, it might have been because of college. We used to have like Madden franchises with like 4 people controlling teams. It would take so long to play through a franchise, but really we would just like yell at people to play their games.
It was the last system I owned, PlayStation 2. I went a couple years, like 4 or 5 years without getting a system. And even though I think PS3 had already come out or was about to come out, I was like, you know what? I've seen 4 years of college, people playing PlayStation 2, enjoying it. And especially the Grand Theft Auto games. So I'm like, awesome. I have to get that. So I got it. I remember a couple games that I just played the hell out of. The Godfather, the first one. Like, The Godfather was actually a pretty fun game. It was sort of like that open world.
It was like a knockoff Grand Theft Auto kind of
game. It was the same people. Yeah, it was a knockoff Grand Theft Auto, but it was pretty interesting. And they did as good as they could. Then, like, some of the voice actors came back, So for me, that's my favorite movie. So there's some nostalgia there. And some of the sports games, too, were really good. And I can't remember. Do you guys remember the game Siphon Filter? Was that game for PS1 or PS2? I'm thinking it's PS1, but I'm old.
I don't remember which one. I vaguely remember that game. I don't think I played it, but I don't remember which system it was for.
I think it was PS1. It was another one of those like spy games. But it had more action than Metal Gear Solid that I mentioned earlier.
I think I peaked at my sports video game playing in PS2. That's probably why I like it so much.
Oh, for sure.
I was ranked.
All the franchises were in lockstep then. Like they had, and the NBA franchise was still pretty decent. It was before 2K Live.
No, it wasn't. See, 2K was on that. See, you were just living in the past there. You hadn't jumped ship yet.
I hadn't jumped ship.
You're very brand loyal to things.
Yeah, I mean, and the NCAA football game. It's a goddamn tragedy that game's not being made anymore.
I never played that really, but I had the NCAA basketball 2K2 or something for that. Was a phenomenal game. It was a phenomenal game.
That was a game that I missed from PlayStation 1 our discussion, March Madness 98, which is a great game.
Yeah.
I feel like the PS2 era was, and you guys kind of alluded to it, but that was the era where we had the most choice. Mm-hmm. Where all the business models were still cranking out. You had
real 2K versus EA Sports.
If you're not an EA guy, you could be a 2K guy. Like you weren't handed just one title. And that's one thing that you don't necessarily have anymore. If EA screws up or they try something that doesn't work, what are you going to do? There's not really many competitors for that.
I mean, this happened years ago. They tried to bring back Live, and it was such a goddamn disaster. They didn't even end up putting the game out.
Yeah, it was. I think it's just been so long, and it was to catch up. I don't know. But that NCAA 2K, which was basically just NBA 2K with college basketball teams, was great. It was like so tough because they wouldn't let you couldn't start your franchise as being a good team because you were the coach. So like if without a resume, I could only get hired by like Western Illinois.
Oh,
and I had to like build up my resume over the years.
What if you had like a booster, like an ex-NBA player that went to university, handed out bags of money. They got Ian Badeau, Alexis.
That would be amazing.
I don't even ask for this. Well,
honestly, somebody like that's a game that should happen. Like how like
Blue Chips, the game,
like
Blue Chips, the game.
Like basically Rockstar should make a college basketball game and just like don't put real team names in because it doesn't matter anyway because you're not gonna be able to put real players. Just make a college basketball game by Rockstar where you can where you have Bagman
And you've got you've got the hookers on campus, and you've got all that stuff. Well, think of it. I can name your first two teams. You've got Western University, like from Blue Chips. You've got ESU from the program. Or maybe it's just you run an athletic department with a sleazy ass football team and like a basketball team that maybe shaves points. It depends. But that would be a great game.
Coach that has sex for 15 seconds and comes down his leg. All kinds of things.
And maybe you buy off the media. Maybe there's an Ed O'Neill out there that can't be bought. He's a man of integrity, a journalist of integrity. Maybe you hire somebody that wears black gloves that takes them out somewhere.
If you coach in a small town in the middle of nowhere, you could totally control the media message.
Exactly.
That comes out.
Exactly.
Great game. It's a great game. We should get in talks with some people. But yeah, PlayStation 2 is where it's at. I think that was just a great system. Also, one of my greatest accomplishments was being ranked 9th in the world at like NBA 2K2 or something, which was like nobody played online because you had to actually buy a separate thing to make your PlayStation 2 go online, which is why I was ranked so high.
You were one of 15 people that decided to brave that pain in the ass to get it done.
No, I just like found some like loophole where I could be ranked high because I used the Orlando Magic. And like they weren't a good team, but Grant Hill was like sneaky on their bench, even though he had like a broken leg, and you could put him in; it'd be really good. And like Stephen Hunter was a really good defensive center, the DePaul product.
Wow,
West Suburban Silver product.
Truly, only a video game could say that Stephen Hunter was a great defensive player.
I can remember all of, like the old weird 2K guys. Like DeMar Johnson was like one of the best point guards in video game history because I could just lock down anybody with a 6'9" point guard. It was great. Yeah, PlayStation 2. Okay, number 2. I had this one ranked the lowest. This is Murph's number 1 system. It's the Nintendo 64.
I mean, it's funny to me that Mac, you said the controllers were a deterrent to you for like the newer systems because N64 had the most complicated controller, but I
totally agree.
I also thought it was the best controller because the Z button was fucking awesome.
I didn't have as many complaints about that controller as the controller with PlayStation and PlayStation, especially I think when PlayStation 2 may have added some extra buttons and the two
joysticks.
Yeah, the two joysticks.
And then it added the second like triggers too.
Usually with the N64 controller, like I'm always thinking of like GoldenEye, you could use the controller almost like a SNES controller or like a place like it never, for whatever reason, it never bothered me the way that the other controllers did.
The Nintendo 64 controller was kind of like you couldn't use it all at once. You had to choose one of two ways to use it.
Sure.
The yellow buttons were weird.
Yeah, just fuck those yellow buttons, dude. They were in a weird spot. Yeah.
But my second best game of all time is on N64, and that's GoldenEye. And I think GoldenEye, that is still to me the most fun I've ever had, other than maybe the wrestling games that were on there.
Oh,
like
Revenge,
WrestleMania, No Mercy,
WCW versus NWO. Those were all basically the same game. But they were all awesome. The graphics were updated each year, and then one of them, it became a WWF game after that. And then you got the Royal Rumble, which was amazing to do with like 4 people.
Yep.
I mean, that system was. It still is as much fun as you can have playing with a big group of people.
Did you guys ever play Mario Party?
No, I did not.
Oh, dudes. I still play that game at my, we played it like 2 years ago at over the holidays. Mario Party is essentially a board game where you roll dice, but then you have to play these games every time after each round of turns, where it's like either every man for themselves, 1 on 3, 3 on 1, 2 on 2. And you essentially play this board game and try to collect coins and stars, but you can just totally fuck people over. And like I've seen fist fights because of this game, and it's phenomenal. It's like the meanest game, and it's this cute package like Mario game, and you can just be a total asshole. And every time we play it, my youngest brother, who's 10 years younger than me and has known this since he was little, and we'd be playing this, is we just tell everybody playing not to believe me and not to believe anything I was saying to them. And I would always get somebody to get on my side.
Going off of that, I still feel like the N64 version of Mario Kart was the best one. It's been the best iteration of it, in my opinion.
I kind of like the Super Nintendo
my favorite multiplayer game.
Mario Kart
and GoldenEye.
GoldenEye to me is almost a perfect game. It pretty much is a perfect game because you can play it alone. You can play it with a bunch of friends. I mean, it changes a little bit with difficulty as you go up. I mean, that game, that was like, holy shit. Like I regretted never owning a 64 strictly because of that game. And then when we got into college and I started playing more of the wrestling games, I was like, wow, I really screwed up on that. In fact, Steve, my bachelor party about a year and a half ago, we got a Nintendo and a 64 in a bar, and we were just playing old Nintendo games and old 64 games. And we played the wrestling games. Yeah, we were at Cody's, and I played a guy I work with, and I was Bret Hart, my favorite wrestler, and he was Kevin Nash. And I made Kevin Nash tap out right in the middle of the ring in the sharpshooter. And then I beat Mike Tyson later, which was probably my crowning achievement in video games in the last 10 years.
Also, the character in Punch-Out is named Mac.
Yes.
Yeah. That also helps. Yeah, I was never just deep into the N64. I played some GoldenEye. I always had trouble seeing, I feel like, on GoldenEye. I don't know why. I just never... I have a couple
yellow buttons. The yellow buttons would help, like, turn you, like turn your shoulder to see around the corner. And if you weren't used to using those, you could get strafed at pretty quickly before you realized.
I never actually owned that system, and I was used to the PlayStation controllers. And but I really liked those wrestling games a lot. Did you ever play and I played a game? There was a game called Wayne Gretzky 3D Hockey for that. That was super fun too.
It was 3-on-3 hockey, right?
It was super fun. Yeah,
it was awesome.
And it had like the Fox track puck,
which is perfect for an arcade game.
Which is amazing for an arcade video game.
Did you guys ever play Star Fox 64? I think it was that was one of the first games. That was really cool.
Yeah,
that was one of those look at our new graphics games that they had.
Because I think they doubled the bit. I thought PlayStation and Saturn
was like 32.
Was 32 bits, and 64 was 64 bits and no loading because of cartridges.
Yeah. Yes, that was it.
That was a huge game changer.
Definitely was an advantage over PlayStation.
Yeah, and the Zelda game was pretty cool too.
Those discs would get scratched to shit pretty quickly if you were beating the crap out of them. Like, oh, weird. Like 12 and 13-year-old kids aren't taking care of their stuff all that well. Big surprise.
Yeah, for sure. Original Star Fox, I remember for Super Nintendo was like the heaviest game because they actually had to build memory into the cartridge because it was like 3D graphics out of Super Nintendo. It cost more than the other games. It was weird.
It was like if you threw that at your little brother, you could kill him.
Yeah, it was like they had it was like the. Oh, we didn't even mention this with Sega Genesis. Remember how there was that game Sonic and Knuckles where you could open up the game and attach another game into the game, and it was so bizarre.
Yeah.
I also remember the game Genie.
Oh yeah,
that thing was great.
Never had that.
You would attach it to your game, and then it would put cheat codes in.
Yeah.
Cheat codes were the best.
I don't think cheat codes really exist anymore. I mean.
I think they just have hacks or something. They call them hacks just probably. Or something.
You can probably just download them. You're right. They're probably add-ons.
Yeah, you pay for it.
Steve, you said you wrote down your statistics in one of the Madden games or
Madden 94.
Yeah, I used to write down the old passwords to punch out. Yeah. I mean, I remember the punch out password, but for Sega, Desert Storm, in the Sega the plastic box I keep all the Sega games, I still have the old Desert Desert Strike password, so I can go in there anytime and get to the third mission or the fourth mission, and it was just complete utter silliness. What did I do? What did I waste my life on at times?
I don't think it was a waste.
Did you read that out of a Nintendo Power magazine?
I absolutely did. Came with a free copy of Dragon Warrior.
After I broke my Nintendo Power glove.
Nintendo Power was awesome. Speaking of. Our overall number one, Mac had it ranked his number one. Murph had it ranked his number 3. I had it ranked my number 2. Gives us a pretty solid consensus here as just OG Nintendo NES, the NES system, number 1. Do any of you guys, before we get into this, remember when it first came out? I did not get it then. When there a robot was with it?
No, I didn't get it until 91.
It came out in 88. It came
out. I came out before that.
I got it.
Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
I think I had it in kindergarten or first grade because I remember getting, I think I got it in first grade because I remember getting Nintendo games for my first communion when I was in second grade, and I'm 3 years older than you guys.
What a day. You were in the heart of Jesus, and you had Nintendo games to prove it.
Yeah, Bubble Bobble for days.
I mean, some of the games are listed from like 84 and 85.
Yeah.
I don't know when the console got to the United States. I would say probably 85, maybe 86.
Yeah, I think I got it in first grade, which would have been like 86, 87.
Yeah.
My neighbor friend, he had it like in kindergarten, which was a big deal, and he had the one with the power pad and stuff.
Yeah, my
It
family
was released July 15th, 1983.
Yeah,
Like,
it was around.
In its
And
first
then it came with a robot. Look up the robot. Look up Nintendo NES robot. It came with a robot.
Is it like the robot in Rocky 4 or Rocky 5 or Rocky 4 that brings you the drinks and like has the sultry voice? Like,
no,
drink?
It was called Rob. ROB, Robotic Operating Buddy.
That's not very sexual.
No,
Rob.
I don't know what it is. I never saw one.
Well,
in
if
person.
you blew on Rob, you never knew what was going to happen.
That's true. If you turned him on, so to speak, you might get something you wanted.
Just blow into his crevice. Okay.
1983.
That was
That's
the
early.
first iteration.
Man, that was the year
All
I was
right.
born.
I mean, I think
We
one of the
gotta-
happiest moments of my life was when I got Nintendo for Christmas.
We got it for Christmas too,
for
like
sure,
right
dude.
around 1990 or 91.
I don't
For
remember what
sure,
the game
it
was,
was-
but I actually opened the game before the system because my parents set it up right, but then I just came down and toppled all my presents. I'm an asshole like that, so they weren't in the proper order. It'd be like if Freebird got played in the middle of the set. You're like, hey, we're back for 6 more songs.
So what were your favorite Nintendo games? OG Nintendo games.
All right, I mean, my number one video game of all time is Super Tecmo Bowl, or Tecmo Super Bowl, I should call it. That's the official name.
Yeah, it's
A lot of people are fans of the first one. The first one's great. I think it's harder to play that game multiplayer. The second game had all the teams. It was so far ahead of its time with saving statistics and playing a whole season. It was just unbelievable how good that game was. I still own it. It still works. Every chance I get, I pull that old Nintendo out and I play it. The only other game I'll mention a quick story that poor Murph's probably heard 100 times from me. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. We just mentioned it a while ago. 007 363 5963 or 5973. I used to know that code by heart, and I always screw up one of the numbers in there. But my cousin John, first guy I know to beat Mike Tyson. I don't know that many. I'm one of them. I've beaten him probably 10, 15 times over my life. But John, in fact, John gave me his version of his Punch-Out now that I have this refurbished Nintendo that my wife got me. So he tells me this story of running into Mike Tyson randomly. This is probably mid-'90s, so Tyson's still an active fighter, or like late '90s. And have you guys been to the Vegas airport?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're in the terminal, and when you go to, when you go to your gate, you have to get on the tram.
Yeah.
It takes you to the gate. So it's real crowded at the Vegas airport at McCarran. And my cousin's like 6'6" or 6'5", beanpole. He gets jammed onto the tram, and he's like super hungover, like getting his flight. And he looks around, all of a sudden he's like, what the hell's this? There's this black guy who is built like a fucking brick shithouse right next to him, who's 5'10". He realizes, oh my God, it's Mike Tyson. And his bodyguard's with him too. And it must have been just after a fight, because he looked like he had a rough night. So my cousin's like, when am I going to see Mike Tyson again? This is just something that'll never happen. So he turns to Mike Tyson. He leans over. He goes, I used to beat your ass in that video game. And Tyson had a good laugh about it. He laughed.
He seems like you'd laugh about stuff like that.
I know, especially now that you've seen him, quote unquote, loosen up.
It'd been a lot scarier to say that to him back then. You could totally say that to him now. And
he was a bad guy then.
Yeah, he was. But yeah, that game was amazing.
One of my big, I think, pop culture blind spots that makes no sense to me is how I never got into the Tecmo Bowl games. Like, it just never happened for me. I don't understand why. I've played them. I don't totally get it. But, like, I'm clearly on the wrong side of this. based on every person I've talked to in the world.
I think it's like people that have you met people that have never really gotten into Star Wars, who have never seen them. I'm one of these people. Like I got into. I saw the Star Wars movies like late. I was like 15, 17, like right around there, and so I don't have the same affinity. I like them.
That's how
I
am with Star Wars.
I don't have the same affinity for them that like the people that were growing up on the first three.
Yeah,
so maybe it's something like that.
I'm the same way with Star Wars. Like I'll watch them. I like them, but yeah, I don't watch them like 800 times and stuff like. But yeah, like a new one comes out, I'll watch it. I saw the last one in the theater. I guess I haven't seen Rogue One, but whatever episode it was, 7. It was really good. I enjoyed it. It was a great theater experience. Those movies are. But yeah, I don't know why that's a blind spot for me. But yeah, I love old Nintendo. Just click like blowing in that thing. I love when people claim that I read like these articles online that said blowing in the cartridge doesn't actually make it work better, which is total lie. Like I don't.
Bullshit.
Everybody.
I feel like everyone who had a Nintendo, if they had it long enough, had their own system for making it work. They knew exactly where to blow in the cartridge, how to, especially for me, I found how to insert it in there properly. Sometimes you'd have to insert it in there like you were performing like oral surgery. It had to be really. And then other times I had a guy who had to jam the game in a certain way and it would work fine every time. So there was no rhyme or reason to any of it.
Mine was you had to when it started to go bad, you had to get it so like just barely could fit in, and when you pushed it down, it had to rub and make a loud noise. Yep. And it would like click really loud and like thud, and then it would work. And I don't know why, but that's just what you had to do with mine, and it would work.
What were your guys' favorite games? I know I mentioned a couple of mine.
I with Nintendo, I don't think I have a favorite game. I wasn't good at video games in the Nintendo era. I don't remember beating many games. There was a Dick Tracy game I beat. I was very excited about that. But I think I liked Tecmo Bowl, and then I will actually veer off course a little and say that Sega NBA Jam was just like my favorite game of all time, I think, because the overlay was the exact NBA on NBC overlay. And I thought that was so fucking cool.
That's why I like Coach K so much for Genesis, was because when the college basketball on CBS, they had the same graphics, the same overlay. So
they did. Actually, CBS still kind of does.
It's close, yeah. It's close.
Yeah, I would say I liked Zelda. I was into those Zelda games. Zelda 2 sucked, though. It was so disappointing. I liked RBI Baseball.
Oh, yeah.
The original one with like little fat guys, and not somehow neither Chicago team was in it, which was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, you could only get a Chicago in the first game. They were on
the All-Star teams.
Team, yeah.
But so I would use the Red Sox, because I don't know, because Roger Clemens was awesome and Jim Rice just hit home runs like it was nobody's business. But I really liked that game and Contra.
Contra's great. You guys ever play Ninja Gaiden?
Yeah,
I did.
Wasn't that also a game
so hard?
The Sega Master System.
It might have been. I think it was made by Konami. That was a game that was just really hard. That game.
Yeah, that game was super hard. I could get to like the 3rd level.
Yeah, exactly. I basically had to throw the controller at the fucking TV because I was just pissed.
Mario 3 was incredible. Too.
Yes, Mario 3. And Mario 2 when it was like Mario and Shrooms because...
Yeah, it was a different game that wasn't a Mario game that they brought to America because Mario 2, they thought the real Mario 2 was too hard for Americans.
And the Mega Man games were cool, and the Turtles games.
Oh, yeah.
The Ninja Turtles games, especially
the second
Turtles
one.
2. Awesome.
Yeah, the first one, I couldn't figure out how to use the ropes on top of the buildings in the first one. Like I just got stuck there every time. The second one was like, it seemed like the graphics were like another system up on the second Ninja Turtles game.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but it was like the coolest. That was like, it was just called like the arcade game. Like, it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game or something.
That was a great arcade game. That was the era of the arcade games where that and the WrestleMania game was awesome.
Yes.
That WrestleMania, I loved. There was an X-Men game that was really good too around then. That was essentially, I think, the same thing as the Ninja Turtles game. Probably made by the same people.
A couple other sports games. Blades of Steel was awesome.
Oh.
I owned
Were you
that.
Blades of Steel or ice hockey? Which one?
Actually, I liked ice hockey better. I thought it was a cleaner game to play, and there was always an argument over the optimal fatty, skinny guy, medium guy lineup.
Yeah, what did you go?
medium guys to me were always useless. So I would go usually with 2 fatties and 2 skinnies.
Yeah, I think 2 fatties, 2 skinnies is usually what I would end up going with in that game too.
Yeah, medium guys, they were just pointless for me.
Yeah, that was a better game. Blades of Steel just had like the weird gimmicks, like the fighting and like the between period, like where you'd play like Galaga or whatever was going on, like, and stuff like that.
Plus, you know, we mentioned the Cold War earlier. Ice hockey was really playing up the Cold War. And how fun is it now in 2017 to see, like, I can play as the U.S., USSR, like Czechoslovakia, like, you know, some of these countries like don't exist in that iteration anymore. And it was totally a Cold War game. It was, you know, and I think, did it play the national anthems? Or was that Blades of Steel? Maybe it was but Blades of Steel had just like Los Angeles, Boston, Chicago.
It was like generic, it was like generic, just like cities where teams were. And then I loved when games had that. And then you had like, I think, was there a Madden that had that? Like an old Madden where it didn't actually have the team names and like the Jets were New Jersey.
Yes, because they had the Players Association.
Yeah, like 93 or something.
They didn't have the NFL, so it might have been called
NHLPA 93 was.
That's what it was. That's what it was. NHLPA 93, where they had fighting and guys' heads.
Long Island was like Long Island. It was like,
yep.
That's like the Islanders were like Long Island and stuff like that. Yeah, I remember that. And yeah, that game was solid. Yeah, then they got rid of fighting for 2 years for no apparent reason. Well, probably because parents complained. Then they had to bring it back.
It's always the pearl clutching parents.
Yeah, god damn it. That's it. Any other systems or anything else you guys want to touch on?
That's all I got.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I pretty much named every video game I've ever played. So this is a fairly comprehensive list if you go back through the whole podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what a PlayStation 4 brings to the party. I have kids, so like I'm talking like obviously the wife, and they're not even 2 years old, but I'm like, yeah, we should probably get a video game system so I can play games with them soon. Even though they're like 20 months old.
I like how you're dropping that in. You're dropping that into her like it's inevitable. Not like, hey, honey, should we get a video game system? You're like, you know, when we get a video game system, we should do it soon. It will aid in their learning. Like you playing the next Grand Theft Auto at 2 a.m. when everyone's in bed is going to make them a better kid.
Yeah, Minecraft. It's just like coding. They're going to learn a lot. Like all that. It's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to learn how to.
Steve, teach your kids to make the next NBA Live game, because after the failure from a year or two ago,
it's not coming out again until they're like 25.
Exactly. So just have them working on that for the next 18, NBA 19, Live, 20 years.
NBA Live 40 or whatever it'll be by like the year. Like they have to fucking come out with it.
Yeah, where LeBron's like a longtime GM.
No, yeah, LeBron's like on a classic team. Or something, and like LeBron James Jr. is like an aging veteran.
He's just retired.
You like one more year. He's not even that good anymore, but you have to use him. All right, this was fun, guys. We shouldn't have waited this long to have you on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. I guess, is there anything you want to plug, Mac? I always ask Carly this, even though I know she has nothing to plug, but I feel like
just find me on Twitter at @B_McCaffrey. I'm usually there for the bad jokes, and that's about it. Otherwise, things are good. I'm gonna get off the podcast with you guys here and go have a couple drinks with my wife.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for everything, and find us on Facebook. Brendan, you got anything coming up?
This podcast will probably not on Saturday. I'm at the Hideout. That will be Saturday, March
2nd, 3rd, 4th.
I'll get it up. I'll get it up tomorrow. So if you're a very early listener, you might be able to catch Brendan.
It's the late breakfast tournament of champions. I got some surprises in store. I need to write it, but it's going to be great.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool idea. It's like a NCAA tournament of comedians.
It's going to be fun and free. Well, it's $7, but it comes with continental breakfast. So
that's a great deal. Yeah, nothing more. All right, guys. Thanks. This has been really fun. Thanks, and we'll talk to you later.